Dear friends, today we will have a discussion about critical pedagogy. Let me introduce what critical pedagogy is. Critical pedagogy is an approach to teaching and learning which attempts to transform the oppressive structures prevailing in society through a democratic means. A fundamental criticism that critical pedagogy raises against the formal system of education is that system as a whole is engaged in the reproduction of the existing inequality and thereby maintaining the status quo of the existing social structure to create a fertile soil for the growth of capitalist system. Maintenance of status quo is done through the higher education system, which is designed in such a way that it satisfies the needs and expectations of the elite group. The reproduction of the existing inequality in society is not done through any kind of coercive means. Instead, it is being done through consensus and creation of a common sense. This is what Antonio Gramsci called bourgeois hegemony. According to Antonio Gramsci, hegemonic domination of the society through a structure of institutions that support and transmit the existing value system through the people who undergo these institutions. Institutions like schools, colleges, government organizations are examples through which domination and hegemony is systematically imparted and legitimized. Given the progressive movements that happened in the field of pedagogy and education, it is surprising to notice that critical pedagogy has not been seriously practiced in our educational institutions. The critical pedagogues pointed out many practices in classroom and in educational institutions that are designed to support and contribute the reproduction of the unequal society. Critical pedagogues like Michel Appel point out in 1990 that there exists a hidden curriculum which prepares students to accept the prevailing inequality and dominance of certain groups in a society. Hence, curriculum is an important tool that molds the student to accept the inequality and current power structure prevailing in society. Another critical pedagogue, Ira Shor, in 1992, through his famous work, Empowering Education, argues that classrooms are modeled in an authoritarian way that accuses students to become passive listeners, conformists, and obedient members of classroom, thereby supporting in the creation of a group of citizens who accept the power structure and obey the decisions which are dropped down from the powerful group. A teacher who is representing a particular class and trying to promote the culture that particular class will become an act of legitimizing the class dominance of the teacher in a classroom. For example, teacher who teaches the students that individual ability is the key factor that help the students to go upward in the ladder of social mobility, indirectly communicates that inequalities in income in the society is the result of an individual action. Even when the powerful social structure plays a significant role in assigning classes and then placing the people in different strata, such kind of beliefs makes people think that society need not be changed, but only individual is needed to be changed. We have already seen that educational institutions are highly political in promoting a particular common sense, curriculum, discipline, institutional practices, ideology, etc. But it doesn't end there. Schools also produce the existing social system and social order through the process of selection and avoidance of certain information or knowledge. For example, in science, we always include good curricular content that promote experimentation, scientific attitude, critical thinking, and so on. But no science curriculum promote a critical outlook among the students that how science and scientific tools are used as a technique for reproduction of the existing inequality. Operation of class differences, exploitation, imperialism, labor movements, etc. also are very well connected to science and scientific developments. But the curriculum that we use in our schools and colleges make a very selective inclusion of the content in science and social science subjects, which will help to maintain the status quo of the existing system. We teach science as a collection of facts and truths. Our failure to teach science as a method of designing a new model and structure that explain a social system is a best example for how we include the content in curriculum in a very selective manner. In case of social sciences, also we can see exclusion and omission of the subjects or content of the knowledge of the people who are marginalized and underprivileged. Best example is Howard Zinn in 2009 pointed out a critical work on people's history of the United States. That means Howard Zinn is presenting the history that most Americans never come across. So far, we have seen the role of critical pedagogy in exploring into its critique on reproductive social order. However, it should be underlined that scope of critical pedagogy is not limiting within its exploration into reproductive social order. It also focuses into the role of education in liberating society and individual from bondages created by the social system. But in addition to this resistance, critical pedagogy propose counter-hegemonic movement through education. This would include creation of theories, practices, or in technical term we call it as praxis, or values, morality, and an overall culture that acts as critic on negation of corporate capitalist hegemony existing in our society. Now, let us look into core elements of critical pedagogy. Critical pedagogy has a diverse background and is being used extensively in varied backgrounds and cultural contexts. Through different critical scholars focused on a different dimensions of critical pedagogy, the gist of all the works carried out by this great intellectual share some common ideas which can be considered as the core values and elements of critical pedagogy. These core elements include dialogue, critique, counter-hegemony, and practice. Dialogue is active engagement and participation of teacher and student in the process which are happening in the classroom, especially with reference to discussions, debates, analysis, and any other intellectual activities carried out in the classroom for the purpose of teaching and learning. Paulo Freire in 1974, through his famous work Pedagogy of the Oppressed, proposed that there exists a culture of silence in our educational institutions. Dialogue is a critical tool that penetrates into the culture of silence and thereby creating a synergy among the students and teachers to discuss and debate over the issues directly related to their personal experiences. Also, there will be a very deliberate attempt to connect and to relate these personal experiences with the content available in the curriculum. For ensuring participation of the students in a particular classroom, critical pedagogy has a larger intention of developing a social consciousness and thereby work as a pedagogy for liberation. Critique is an analysis of society and self-operating in a society with a special emphasis upon inequality and exploitation, oppression, and domination. All kinds of oppressions are analyzed in the process of critique. Mainly race, class, gender, and any other forms of oppression prevailing in society will be subject to critique practiced in a classroom based on critical pedagogy. In discussing such issues and themes, a very robust methodology is very essential. Critical pedagogy rejects empiricism, logical positivism, and postmodern methodologies and propose a critical realist approach. Critical realist paradigm proposes praxis as the basis of emancipatory knowledge. Another important element of critical pedagogy is counter hegemony. Counter hegemony is a juxtaposition to bourgeois hegemony, bringing out the difference and contradictions in the class and any other social practices that categorizes the population in the different strata is an important strategy for counter hegemony. Similarly, ideologies and their functions in construction and facilitation of the class differences also is being exposed in critical pedagogy so that it functions as a counter hegemonic tool. The prevalence of individualism, meritocracy, authoritarianism and hierarchical structures will be challenged through communalism, egalitarianism, democracy and participatory structures. Transformation of society is the ultimate aim of critical pedagogy. This pushes all curriculums including science, humanities and social sciences outside the classroom and connect with social issues and activism in society. One may confuse that this looks quite similar with social services and social extension activities volunteered by many students and other groups. But praxis or practice differ from such kind of volunteerism through its ultimate purpose of transforming the existing system to a just and egalitarian society. Paulo Freire has identified praxis as the first step of conscientization. Praxis is defined as the power and know-how to take action against oppression while stressing the importance of liberating education. Praxis involves engaging in a cycle of theory, application, evaluation, reflection and then back to the theory again. Social transformation is the product of praxis at the collective level. Now let us look into a new concept which has been proposed by critical pedagogy, that is known as banking system of education. For explaining the contemporary system of education, Paulo Freire, who is considered as the progenitor of the idea of critical pedagogy, used the analogy of bank. In the banking system of education, students are considered as empty vessels to be filled by the teacher. In this process, student is a passive object who receives knowledge without a critical analysis and store it for a long time. Whenever the purpose of education stored is over, students will empty their knowledge base, leading them to remain as empty containers again, which means that teachers deposit knowledge into students and withdraw at the time of annual or semester examinations, which makes students zero balance in their accounts. According to Paulo Freire, the students are the depositories and the teacher is the depositor. Instead of communicating, the teacher issues communiques and makes deposits with the students, patiently receive, memorize and repeat. This is the banking concept of education, in which the scope of action allowed to the students extends only as far as receiving, filing and storing the deposits. Banking system of education is designed by the oppressive groups in society who need subordinates to serve them. Ultimate result of such system of education is the dehumanization of the students. Dehumanization is a state where an individual is not able to express himself or herself fully. There exist a lot of limit situations for an individual to express themselves freely in the society. These limit situations are the creation of the powerful groups in the society who control and regulate the social system. Ontological vocation of every individual is to liberate oneself to express fuller potentialities inherent in them. When this opportunity is denied to an individual, they remain in a state of alienation. The same process happens in educational institutions as well. As the students are not allowed to express themselves freely in the classroom, they become dehumanized. This dehumanization leads individual to culture of silence, where he finds it very difficult to break the whirlpool of silence. Paulo Freire in 1991, through his famous work, alleges that both the humanization and dehumanization of the human are possible, as the human is not an incomplete being. The humanization process of the persons is hindered through such instruments as unfairness, exploitation and pressure. According to Paulo Freire, banking system of education is one of the major tools used to shape the students to accept certain social roles without any resistance. In this process, student is treated as an object without any human qualities like critical thinking, reflections, analytical abilities and so on. This process result in the construction of a society who are alienated from their own consciousness. Opposing this particular kind of education, Paulo Freire advocated for conscientization of the students. Conscientization is a state where an individual is aware about oppressive elements working upon them. Critically looking into the environment and the surroundings of an individual would be able to understand in what way oppression and its dynamics are functioning upon individual. Let us look little more into the idea of critical consciousness. Critical pedagogy is optimistic in its very nature. It strongly believes that the existing oppressive systems can be mitigated through social arrangements and relationships. Power is never been contained among the oppressed and the system that support oppressors. The oppressed also can make use of power to react and resist the oppression imposed upon them. This power of involving oneself in the process of resisting and reacting to the impressive conditions is there with both the oppressor and the oppressed. Power of resisting oppressive conditions by the oppressed and the capacity the oppression accepted upon others by the oppressor involves critical consciousness. For Paulo Freire, critical consciousness is recognizing and resisting oppressive social arrangements in order to avoid reinscribing, validating and reproducing contradictions and asymmetries. Hence, critical consciousness involves restructuring and reforming the oppressive social systems that paves way for establishment of humanity of everyone. Any factors that dehumanize individual will be identified through the process of critical consciousness. Praxis is an important element of critical consciousness. It involves action and reflection. The individuals develop critical consciousness, liberating oneself from the oppressive system as well as ensure the liberation of the whole humanity, which include oppressed and the oppressor. Let us look into the very special kind of educational strategy which has been proposed by critical pedagogy. It is problem posing education. According to Paulo Freire, he suggested problem posing education as an alternative banking system of education. Critical pedagogy consider problem posing education as a tool for liberating people from their oppression. Critical pedagogy considers curiosity as one of the most important tools for approaching knowledge. Freire summarizes the process of acquiring knowledge as follows. I quote, "Knowledge emerges only through invention and reinvention, through the restless, impatient, continuing, hopeful inquiry human beings pursue in the world, with the world, and with each other. Unquote. Critical pedagogy rejects the popular notion that the teacher should be updated with the latest content to engage in the process of problem posing education. Critical pedagogy rejects the possession of absolute knowledge by the teacher as the precondition for teaching. What is most important in problem posing education is that teacher has to treat the student as progressive human with ontological vocation to become more human. This kind of an attitude provides a stage for the teacher to freely engage in the process of problem posing and dialogue. Problem posing education treat all kinds of knowledge as historical product developed in a particular context for the use of those who constructed the knowledge. The context in which the knowledge generated plays a very important role in determining the nature and purpose of knowledge. Hence, the knowledge which is developed in a historical context may not be useful for an individual who learns that knowledge in a different context. Every individual has the capacity to construct knowledge of their own. In this process, the learner is assisted by the teacher as a co-perceiver of the subject matter under consideration. This helps both teacher and student progress simultaneously. The problem posing model defines people as beings that, or students as beings that who are in process of being completed. Unlike other living beings, the humans are aware of the fact that they are not complete and competent. This incompleteness and awareness makes it compulsory for the education to be a continuous activity as a way of expression that is unique to human being. The people undergoing such education create an actual form of thinking and acting, according to Paulo Freire. Let us look into how dialogue will work in a classroom. As we know, our academic year starts with courses students have to complete for getting sufficient credits in semester. These courses will be organized in the form of syllabus, curriculum, outlines, etc. The first task of the teacher is to evolve this formal curriculum into the form of a student-centered dialogue that connect the content with the social, cultural, scientific and any other issues that we confront with. Teachers can provide a written text that connect the content with daily lives of the students. Whether it is social science, humanities or science, duty of a teacher is to connect the content with the daily lives of the student. This is one of the most important factors that lead dialogue into a successful activity. The writing should be provocative and to motivate the students to interrogate more into the connection between the subject matter and their life experiences. In organization of the dialogues, challenges faced by most of the teachers is that students do not wholeheartedly and actively participate in the discussion. The main reason for this lackluster participation and enthusiasm of the students is mainly due to their unfamiliarity in participating in public discussions and debates which they are not conversant with. This can be resolved by connecting the subject matter to the daily lives of the students, especially that of something which is related to the exploitation that is being experienced by the students. Students may be asked to identify a common problem that they wanted to resolve. This may be followed by working in small groups and collecting data and developing plans for solving the issues. Products of these small group discussions will be discussed in large groups in the classroom, which gives more ideas to the students about the different dimensions of the issue under consideration. Every student get an opportunity to contribute into the group discussions, both small and large groups. they experience the thrill and beauty of working in a democratic system. Now let us look into how a teacher will be looking like in a critical pedagogy based classroom. Teacher in critical pedagogy is a problem poser. Through problem posing, the teacher promote the critical consciousness. This will enable the students to understand the process of reproduction of existing inequality to the subject that they are learning. Teachers in critical pedagogy are treated as transformative intellectuals who can understand the ways in which oppression and the reproduction of the existing inequality are being a job of the knowledge base that they are trying to transmit as part of the curriculum. Transformative intellectualism is possible only if the teacher could learn from the students about the various dimensions of the students, including their socio, cultural, economic, political, thereby making deliberate interferences to empower them for construction of an egalitarian society. Knowledge transmitted by the teacher is being used as an important tool that promote the critical consciousness of the students. Teachers have also a critically reflective role, that is to say, for producing an open and equal environment, they must engage in self-reflection about their position and the effects of their authority in the classroom. According to Crabtree and Sapp in 2004, they said that self-reflection is the form of questioning one's motives, purpose, ideology and pedagogy as informed by theory and habit. Self-reflection enables teachers to make their classes student-centered by accepting unsuccessful educational ideas and oppressive forms in their own educational practices. Degener in 2001 stated that critical educator helps students to understand the reasons behind the facts. Now let us look how students should be in a critical pedagogy classroom. Students in critical pedagogy are active participants in the process of learning. They co-construct the curriculum, syllabus, pedagogical and evaluation activities. Critical learners, as Moore and Parker says, are those who can accept, reject or suspend judgment about a claim. Students are expected to engage in social criticism to create a position for them in public space through which we can exercise power over their own lives, at the same time empowering others exercise their power in shaping their destiny. Paulo Freire proposed that there is a fluid relationship between teachers and students, that is, teachers are learners and learners are teachers. Therefore, learners are not recipients of knowledge, rather they become creators. Freire also confirms that no one teaches another, nor is anyone self-taught. Men teach each other, mediated by the teacher. Let us conclude the session. The ultimate goal of critical pedagogy is the individual and social liberation from all kinds of exploitative elements and thereby creating an egalitarian society. It is difficult to assess the success or the performance of the student in such kind of course. Intention of critical pedagogy is the creation of a critically conscious mind of the students, which enable them to identify oppressive elements existing and approaching them in future. This facility will provide a kind of empowerment for the students, thereby will be able to restore the full humanity which is lost in them. In spite of the differences in the subjects, critical pedagogy perceives all the subjects and their discourses related to it as a tool for developing critically conscious minds in the students. Hope the session was useful to you all. See you next time. Goodbye.